guys, welcome to this month's episode of the Made to Win podcast. I'm excited about today's guest. We've been friends for several years. Met him several years back at Elevation Church. He used to be the campus coordinator, which means he would actually launch all of the campuses outside of Charlotte. So he launched 11 campuses outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. He's been church planter. He's been on staff. He's now coaching church planters, staff, churches all across America. He's been an executive pastor. This is a guy who is just one of the top shelf leaders I've ever met in my life, but he's also a legendary dad. And so today we're talking about dad hacks. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Stephen Webb, otherwise known as Swebb. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this month's episode of the Made to Win podcast. I am super stoked because this month I have the Stephen Webb,
yes,
otherwise known as the Swebb.
The Swebb.
The Swebb. So what's up, man?
Man, I'm so good. I can't believe I'm finally on here. You know, I always watch who's gonna come on next. I hear because then you'll see it in little text or different posts, and I'm like, one of these days I'm gonna make it. One of these days I'm gonna climb that hill and I'm gonna get on this podcast.
Well, like, no joke. Like, here's the thing, though, is like, even though we've become really good friends, like, dude, you're still super intimidating, and
no way.
It's like, I need to get a lot of episodes under my belt before I have like the man on, because if I act like an idiot or sound like an idiot when I have him on, like, he's going to be like, which is fun, because that, like, the phrase that we always throw around the office here is "that's fine."
That's fine.
But if you hear "that's fine," translation is "you're an idiot." So
I don't know where you learned that from either, because it was sure couldn't have been me, man.
If you don't know Swebb, so I mean, you can do that if you want. That's fine. But in the moment, you're like, he's telling me if I do this, I'm an idiot. So I don't do that. It's not fine.
No, you're going to do great. I can't believe I'm intimidating. It's funny because right before we hit record on this, I'm asking you what your freaking Murph time was. And you said, oh, I could barely run a mile without sucking wind. I'm like, that's a week's worth of running for me. So you have your own intimidation factor to me. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying to keep my arms out of the video because I can see your arms in the video. So that's fine. That's fine. We can intimidate each other.
It was funny because I tell you that I ran they have like a local strawberry festival here, because that's what our community is known for, is strawberries. It's like 30,000 people show up to this thing every year.
Jeez.
But they do a 5K every year, and I never ran it. But this year I'm like, it was before the Murph. And so I was like, I'm going to try it out and I'm going to run it in my vest. So I did a 30-minute 5K in my vest. So I was pretty stoked for that.
I don't want to go to the grocery store in a vest. I don't want to do a pull up with regular clothes on. I don't want to do that stuff. That's hard, man. But I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. For the last couple of years, you've been challenging me and pushing me from afar, and I'm still trying to live up to you, man.
I appreciate that. But man, I'm excited today because this is actually a special episode, Father's Day episode. And I just believe you're a legend when it comes to dads. And so I wanted to just do an episode called Dad Hacks, because I don't know. I think maybe growing up without a father for me was kind of a motivational deal of like, man, I just remember when I started having kids, me and my wife, I was like, man, you kind of have this fear, right? Of just like, man, do I even know what I'm doing? And the answer to that question is no. But I think it's always been a passion of mine to like, man, I want to make sure my kids have a dad that, again, and we'll talk about this, not a perfect dad, but a dad that's just present. It's there, you're really trying. And so I think that maybe there's a lot of dads out there that whether they are trying or whether they're discouraged because they feel like they're not a perfect dad, whatever it may be. And plus Father's Day anyways, it's always like, it feels like the forgotten holiday. It's like, yeah, happy Father's Day, you jerk, send me your money, whatever. But, so I just wanted to do something encouraging today, and hopefully something that's challenging too. I think we're afraid to be challenged in today's culture. And especially as Christians, right? I think there's just a sense of like, if you're a Christian, you're not supposed to say anything to hurt anyone's feelings or challenge anybody. But I do hope this is challenging to dads, future dads, whatever. So, but Yeah, man, we're going to jump in. And I think the first conversation that you and I kind of discussed we wanted to have is this whole idea of like, I think a lot of people do a great job of doing things for their kids or raising their kids to be kids, but they never raise their kids to be adults.
Right. That's a great point.
This shift that has to happen. I mean, I always find it funny too. Like, I love college sports, watching college sports, and they're talking about these 22, 23-year-old dudes. And it's always like this kid. And I'm just like, it really is a normal kind of a label for dudes now. I mean, you could be 25 and still be a kid.
Yeah. Right.
And so let's have that conversation for a few moments, because I think there were 5 things that I kind of jotted down. And I actually got this from a book, The Intentional Father by John Tyson, but he talks about like these 5 things that you have to lead especially your young men into when they go from a kid to an adult. But it's this thing of like, man, number one, life is hard. Right.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you have to transition them from like, there's a moment in their life when everything is done for them. Their lunch is packed for them. They, you're tying their shoes, you're changing diapers, you're doing everything for them. But what I see is a lot of parents don't ever break out of that. They're 15, they're 16, they're 17, and the parents are still doing every single thing for them. And so talk to us a little bit about like, man, and for those who don't know, like we're on a text thread together with dads, and it's all about dad stuff. But I love like the questions that you ask your son every single day, and talk a little bit about that, and especially about doing hard things.
Yeah, no, that's life is hard. I don't know what else we're going to add to that list, because that if everybody just figured that out, I feel like everything would be a little bit I don't know, easier, more effective moving forward. At least you set your expectations. So, and that text thread, I appreciate you being on it, by the way. That's a real insightful workout, so to speak. I feel like it's, just when it hits the right way. So I appreciate that. Man, the questions I don't remember where first of all, let me give you my context. I grew up in a generic Brady Bunch family. Brady Bunch is mixed family, but whatever. I grew up with just one brother, my mom and dad. Been around. They've been married for whatever it is, 40 something years, 45 years or so. And so that doesn't mean my life was any easier, but that's just the context I'm coming from, just an FYI. And then I got a 7-year-old son and a 10-year-old girl, just leaving 1st and 5th grade, again, just for context. And so I'm getting in, by the way, I've already been taking notes from you for a while, but getting into that phase of like, she's going to middle school. So that sounds like a jab to the throat right now. So be interested to see how that'll work out.
Yes.
But she's not driving yet. Speaking of, life is hard. So, but life is hard. And for some, I'm hyperlogical, just personally before being a dad, I'm just hyperlogical. I just always ask, like, did you think about that? Or like, does it work? I don't care who said it or how they said it or the tone. I just, at the end of the day, 2 + 2 is 4. That's all I really care about. It's kind of how my brain works. So when I had kids, it was kind of the same place of like, man, it's not going to work very long if I'm trying to baby my kids, put them in a bunker somewhere, padded walls, the whole bit. I'm just not good at that. And that's not how life is. Again, I grew up in a relatively safe, simple-ish life, but I know a lot of people don't. And so I didn't want to fall into that trap of, waking up one day and my kids are grown-ups acting like kids. And so that being said, to your point, my questions I started asking my son this on a regular basis. Well, first I used to give him a statement, and my mom taught me this, and she had heard it from an author or something. She said, hey, I heard this stat that you might find interesting, or this direction that I heard from this author or something like that. And it's that every day strive to get your kids to get sweaty, meaning get your boys out there and run. This is true for kids, not boys or girls. It's just for both. But I have that son, and I really started to implement that with my son, even though my daughter early on would get out and scrape her knees and all that kind of stuff. Hey, go get sweaty. And then that would morph into, as my kid would start listening to that and go outside and do those things, he'd say, oh man, I fell down, Dad, I would scrape my knee, or I got my shirt dirty. Or even just yesterday, my daughter had a brand new shirt, brand new yesterday, or bought it 2 days ago. Yesterday, she got paint on it already. So my wife and I view that differently. I'm like, hey, that's what kids do. Good job, babe. You know? So my wife's not thrilled about that. And I guess I did waste, in that case, 10 or 15 bucks on that shirt. But that morphed into like, hey, boys get dirty. That's how I started saying it to my son. Boys get dirty. That's what happens, buddy. And I get my high five. He's like, well, brush it off. You'll be fine. Boys get dirty. And so I wanted to normalize the fact that dirt, sweat, pain, frustration happens. And then I know I've taken a long journey around to this answering your question, but then that's morphed into these 2 questions I asked my son, or actually both kids, every day. That's my son's, he's a mini me for a lot of obvious reasons. So the way he expresses it in return nowadays is a little different than my daughter, but I say, without fail, every day I'm asking, hey, what did you do today that was hard, or what hard thing did you do today? Or if he's telling me a story, was that your hard thing you did today? And I just want to intentionally put into the language on a regular basis. It's just part of the atmosphere, like breathing, that, hey, life is hard. I want to know, did you see it? And did you jump into it? What did you do that was hard today? And sometimes it's like making a friend with a stranger. We moved states from Florida to Texas over Thanksgiving. So the first day at school, that's a hard thing. Did you talk to a stranger, in that case, in your classroom? So yeah, what did you do hard? And my second thing is, what's your favorite part of the day? And that sounds like a really simple thing to ask. But again, it's just putting in the idea of like, let's go have fun. Life is hard, but life is fun. I don't think they're opposites. I think they're the exact same thing. And matter of fact, my 7-year-old son, he's on his way to 8, but my 7-year-old will put those 2 together sometimes. And he'll say, oh, man, here's what I did that was hard today, Dad. And then later on, what's your favorite part of the day? And the next part of that sentence is essentially what his fun thing was. Yeah. And that's just really helped me. It's been a lot of fun. And then now he's starting to ask me those in return, by the way. So that's always a lot of fun.
That is super cool. I think the thing about kids too, that we forget is, a lot of times we talk about like family values or what values you have, but like your kids, if you ever sat down and asked them, hey, what do you think I value? It really is like the things that they see you doing, right? And the thing that I think is fascinating about, the thing I love about you, man, and your family is like, just to give back context to your story, is like, you're talking about a guy, like you guys you're from the Dallas area, right?
That's right. Yep.
And like you've moved to Colorado, to Charlotte, to Orlando, to Austin. And so like all of these are different journeys. You're a freaking pilot, like you helped start, what was it, like 13, 14 campuses?
No, just 11.
That's what I said. But see, you have people that are pumping you up, man. You gotta let them, like, it's always exponentially more. Mm-hmm. That's how legends start.
That's
bro.
Right. 36 campuses. Yes. I think it's 40 now.
That's the story of Hercules, bro.
That's right.
But like all of these things, to me, like as a kid growing up, you're saying, man, those are hard things, but it's been fun. Cause like, I think that's kind of your approach on life in general, is like, you're doing all these things that most people will go like, man, I don't know how Swebb does that. Like, that seems like that would be really hard. But the cool thing that I've seen about you and your family is that you are having fun in the middle of doing it. And so I think that's the thing to be reminded too, is that sometimes we think, even like when we're working or whatever, it's like, yeah, I'm working for, food, money, whatever. I'm working to provide, but work should also bring a bit of joy, right? It
totally.
Should, like this idea of reward, this idea of gratitude. And I think that's something that we fail to teach our kids. We always teach our kids, like, better stay in school or you're going to have to work.
Fear. It's all fear, man. Yeah.
So, but that's so good.
To your fun thing, this hit me recently. I've been processing this thought, and I'll just vomit here on this voice memo or this podcast. Is like, just think about the phrase "have fun" versus "make fun." Think about how negative "make fun" is. If you make fun of somebody, that's not ever a good thing. Nobody's like, "Oh, that guy's so fun. He makes fun of people." That's not positive. But having fun, therefore, I know I'm oversimplifying this, but it's how my brain works. And then it helped me process this with my kids, and then they started to see this too. Like, hey, fun is a decision. It is hard to move, and it's hard to spend this money there, or experience this slowdown there, or to sit in your house in a bunker for 2 years during COVID, if that's the case, whatever. But you can have, like, it's out there. You can have fun.
Yeah.
But making fun is negative and probably not even real in this particular context, I think. So I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to, whatever I have around me, I'm going to have fun. It's there to be had.
Yeah.
And so that's even that, like, it's just maybe a play on language and words there. But even then that just changes the mindset for my kids. Like, hey, we're going to drive 18 hours today. We're going to have fun. We're not going to try to make it fun, because you can tell, when you're trying to make something fun and force it. Now we're just back into fear, and all we did was change the language. So that's just something helpful for me. That's helped me survive the last 20 or 30 years of being a grown up, or trying to be a grown up at least. And then as having kids, it's just better, instead of trying to make fun and force my kids to enjoy something. Say, you should be grateful, there's starving kids in Africa and all that kind of stuff you hear. No, let's just have fun. It's there to be had. And I'm trying to now use that as the lens to look through, and I'll find the fun, and then everything just frankly gets easier.
Well, that's the discussion we've been having lately, of just like, even our church world, our current context of church is so difficult, because like you're trying to create something, as a pastor, as a church planner, and you've been there in all of these different stages too. It's like you do want to create something that is a powerful, great experience for people. But I think the problem we've ran into with our context of church today is that we try so hard to create something where people don't have a bad experience.
Yeah.
When they have their first bad experience, they leave, because now we've created an expectation that church life, everything should be like, man, what are you giving me?
Right.
It's going to make me feel good today. It is the have fun versus the make fun deal.
Yep.
So we're finding that true with student ministry, all of those things, where it's like, we are tasked with this job to make sure everybody's having a good time. And that's just not reality, right?
No.
And it does not help anybody.
Yeah, you're right. Cause you're setting yourself up to fail. It's a false expectation.
Yeah.
And then you're always chasing it. You're chasing it essentially downhill as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work. So I'm trying to normalize fun. I'm trying to normalize hard, and I'm trying to not divorce those two from each other, and just be like, hey, you can make it whatever you want. Like you can have fun, or you can hate life, but I'm going to normalize that life is hard. I'm going to normalize that we have the opportunity to make it fun or have fun.
That's so good. Well, the other transition that John Tyson talks about is this whole idea of like, it's not about you. And so he talks about the transition from selfishness to serving.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to that conversation of where everything in life has now, you are at the center of everything. Like all of our family time has been spent like, man, we got to make sure whatever you want to do, you're at the center of your world. And then we're surprised when we've told kids like everything is about you, everything is about what you want. And then one day it's like, man, life doesn't pan out that way. So maybe talk about like some of the things that you've experienced as a dad that you're trying to teach your kids, like, hey, it's you got to learn to be selfless.
Well, you have to prove it. You can't talk about it. You got to prove it. And the only way to do that is to take them with you in places where they're not the center of attention. Not every day is their birthday. Not every, like you said, not everything's about them. But if it's like, hey, I have to go do a meeting, I'll come back and spend time with you. Now you've just isolated again. You've compartmentalized. And I get Sabbath and rest and coming home and leaving work at the office and blah. I get all that stuff, but go with me here where I'm trying to take them with me as much as I can to places and let them see who I see. I want them to hear me talk with other people. Even like, so a couple weeks ago, I was hosting a guest preacher here at our church, Mark Kresge, good dude. He lives in California, so naturally he flew in. And so I picked him up in the airport and I hosted him for the day. Of course, he preached. And then on the way back to the airport, Summer, 10 years old, she's asking me, can I go with you? And I thought about it for a second. I thought, yeah. So let me ask him. And he's got a son that's a little older, or excuse me, a little younger than Summer. So I was like, he's probably going to be good with it. And again, we're kind of friends now. So I asked, and I just stuck in the back seat and I said, now listen, you sit in the back seat, you listen, but don't talk unless spoken to, and just come with us. Can you be quiet? We went to lunch first with him. And so normally, I've hosted some pretty relatively big names in the church world, and that's a different thing. Like, it's just like a no-no. And I'm like, nah, as long as I'm in charge, and if I have the ability, I'm going to break that quote rule and take them with me when I can. So that's just a recent example. And then she hears what I talk about. She hears how I talk to those people. Then she hears their stories, which then just further, pushes this fact that life is hard. There's an opportunity to have fun. This is how regular people do things out there. And not everything's about you. But again, that has to be proven by putting them around other people who might be in that spotlight. One other example for me, and you've seen me do this because I got the awesome privilege to come to your church with my son, right? I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, whenever that was. Seems like an eternity ago, but just bringing him out. And hey, daddy's got to go on a work trip. But when I did that, as soon as I did that, going back to some of the language things I do, I make sure that our kids know that the Webb family, we build the church. That's what we do.
That's so
and
good.
Even I had the church expansion job before we had kids. And I made sure, so from their birth, that's what we have done. And so I would go to different places, as you know, through Elevation. And I would say, hey, I'm going to go to this town so that this town can have e-kids like you go to e-kids at your church. So I'm normalizing the idea that I leave and have to go do work, but that you're a part of it when you serve and you're obedient to mom and you clean the house and all those kinds of, like, you're part of this mission. And then as they get older, I'm able to then bring my son, in this case, to your church and hang out with you guys for a couple of days, normalizing the fact that, again, life is hard. We get out, we're going to have fun. There is fun to be had if the schedule looks different or whatnot. I have to work. It's not all about you. So I need you to sit on the plane. I need you to sit. I'm going to be at this meeting. And if I make it normal, I'm fast pacing them to adulthood and to the ideas of these values you're trying to communicate now, or that we're trying to communicate through this podcast now. But see how that's proven? I can't talk to them about my trip. I can't talk to them about one day you'll go see Mr. Brandon Petty. Instead, I'm like, you know what, frick, just come with me. And then I got to prove it.
That's so good. And that's, we try to do that too, especially as the kids have gotten a little bit older and we're able to do that being flexible with our time. But it's like, we'll go to Atlanta in July to be down there with one of our mutual friends, Carl Nichols. But when I go down there to preach, it's like I could just be like, hey guys, I'm going to Atlanta to preach and I'll see you when I get back. But we've been able to take them with us.
Great.
Let them experience meeting other staff, meeting other kids.
Right.
And what's cool is over the years, they've built friendships across the country from just going different places and being able to be a part of that journey, like you said, where it's like, man, they get it. And it's an opportunity to serve, to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
Hey, one other thing you just said right there that I've been frankly shocked at how uncommon this is that, like you said, they have friends across the country. And I have friends that are in their 30s that have never crossed the Mississippi River from the East Coast. And that,
wow.
I'm not making fun of them. I just didn't know that, having gone from Dallas, which is the center of the country, so I can go anywhere in 3 hours. So then, like you said, I'm just physically living in Colorado or Charlotte, or Orlando was, but then traveling. So again, that's normalizing this. No, it's no wonder kids grow up or grown-ups get to the point of like, it's all about me. Yeah, because you've never left that town or that city or whatever. So, man, that's a soapbox for me, is like, freaking take your kids out of town.
Yes.
I know you can't afford it. I'm not saying Disney World. I'm not talking about junk like that. I'm just saying, like, just take them down the street 2-3 hours away. Try to change time zones and see what that does for them.
Yeah.
And that'll dramatically, obviously expand their perspective and horizons on things. So that's not a small thing to not gloss over. I hope everybody picks up on that and plans a trip soon.
100%.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, because in this idea of transitioning kids to adults, you posted something in the dad text thread that was so good, but you talked about a bucket list for your kids. And that bucket list was, these are the things that I want to do with my kids before they leave the house.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that bucket list.
Well, that's just intentionality. I didn't want to just stumble into fatherhood. I didn't want to stumble into memories. I wanted to make memories. That's the language, right? Oh, let's go make memories, or they made memories or whatever. I don't want them to happen. I want to make them. I feel like they're just going to be better if I'm in charge. I think that about a lot of things in life. If I'm in charge, things are better. So especially when it comes to my memories, then I'm going to make them. Yeah. And again, I'm just hyperlogical. Somehow that hit me really, really early. Like, I'm pretty sure Summer wasn't even born yet. She was still baking before, or when I figured this out. But I started making a bucket list. What I want to do with my kids. I just put some silly stuff on there. Anybody can make their own list. These are not like super deep, but just some of the ones like to reference the text you're talking about. I was like, hey, can I get my kids to Disney while they're still kids? I took my wife before she was my wife. We were engaged. We went to see friends in Florida, and I took her to 3 Disney parks in the same day. which was really crazy because she had never been. I want to say she's maybe 21 at the time. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I'm like, let's make a memory. If it's the most magical place on earth, so they say, or at least it was a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
then let's do that. So, Disney by 8, for example, 8 years old was like a goal. It was just like a fun thing if I could hit it. I went to my first NFL game, Dallas Cowboy game, when I was 16. And I think that's great because that's back when they were still remotely good, and which is why I'm a lifer. I have to be a Cowboys fan. I grew up in that time, but I was like, oh, can I get my son to an NFL game by 10?
Also,
so make a bucket list.
Thing, Steve.
Hey, listen, life's not fair. It's not about you. Life is hard. I'm a Cowboys fan, right? So save $1,000 is on this list, meaning them save it. Can give $1,000 to their name. Can they get their first job? I put their first job by 12. And I mean, like, I put like lemonade stand, walking the dog, stuff like that.
Right.
My neighbors used to say, hey, will you come over and watch feed the cat while we're out of town for a couple of days? And I was like 8 years old. And I was like, I need to do more of that. I got cash now. Yeah. So what can I do to push that? The idea of responsibility, that, by the way, that's not a puberty thing. Oh, I hit puberty now, or I reach high school. Now I'm responsible. That's crap. If you can speak English, hey, meaning you're 2-3 years old, whatever, you can start learning the idea of responsibility. So I'm trying to push that age down. One thing that I didn't put in that text, but I think about, and I've posted about it a couple of years ago, is my favorite one is I wanted to travel 1 million miles with each kid before I die. And I literally have a spreadsheet for each kid, and I tracked it. And it doesn't mean vacation. It just means we are outside of the norm. When we left Charlotte to go to Roanoke, Virginia for a business trip for me at the church, I would put that 200 miles. And I used round trip. I'm trying to get to 1 million faster. So I'd say, all right, that's 400 miles. Yeah. But every vacation, every trip I would take them on, and I would track that. And can I get to 1 million miles before I die? And you might be surprised, especially in that job where I traveled for a living. You might be surprised at how quick those things add up. We're well over 100 with Summer, 100,000 miles, and she's just 10. And I feel like if we get back to some version of normal in the world, and she starts making money, maybe we do 25,000 mile trips to Asia or whatnot. So we'll see. But to me, that was my most fun one, which again just brings the perspective, like life is different everywhere else. Life is hard. Let me go show you some different life. And that bucket list is going to both give her education as well as great memories. So,
well, it's, the more I talk to, especially, when you hit milestones like we just hit, where it's like, hey, our daughter is now driving, like you have to make the call to the insurance company, like, hey, you got to add a driver to the insurance. It's just a moment of like, God,
that sounds terrible.
So yeah, it is. Especially inflation, right? But anyway, it's like, so she comes home from her test, and she's been driving with one of us for like last year, and she's like, all right, I'm off to soccer tryouts, and you're watching her leave. Like you're like, wait a minute, she's alone, like she's by herself driving off. My wife's in tears, and I'm thinking, please don't have a wreck, so we don't have insurance yet, right?
Yeah,
but so many people are just like, man, it flies by, like, but I think so many people have so many regrets because they allow life to control them instead of them, like, kind of what you're saying, like being intentional with the years and the days that you have with your kids. I'm blown away by how many people just live life by the seat of their pants. Like they really don't have a plan on anything financially with their kids, their family, nothing. And then the rest of their life is, I truly think the term midlife crisis came from people who just never had a plan or lived with any kind of purpose or intentionality. They live by their feelings, their emotions, and by the moment.
Dude, that is so right.
And I think there's a time for that, right? Like you can't plan every single, it's anal or whatever, but like, but there's this feeling of like people just, you graduate. It's the linchpin book, right? Where it's like you graduate. Okay, what cog do I fit in? I get to that cog. I get the house. I get the kid. I get the dog, and then I should be happy. And then you're 50, you're divorced, your kids hate you, you didn't do anything with them. It's just like, I wish people could just get the idea of understanding, like, man, if I just live with some sort of purpose, some sort of intentionality, and be present in every situation, it's just a game changer. It's
yes.
But it's funny because there are a lot of people who they have a bucket, people talk about bucket lists, like all those things before you die. Right. But it's like, what could you do in the next year?
Yeah. Right.
Let's not think like death. Let's think, what about the next 2 years? What could I accomplish and do?
I heard Mark Batterson, he said this years ago. He said the goal of life is not simply to arrive safely at death. And I'm trying to do the opposite of that, which is how fast can I, get through adventures or memories or whatnot? Because I do think, like you said, everybody's just like, okay, I got 60 more years to live. No, you have 60 more years to sit and survive, apparently.
Right.
But I just, that line hit me. I want to get to death, like just clawing my way, crawling. I've lived every moment, every memory. I've thrown the kids out to do 1,000 different things and like, hey, go experience this, experience that. And let's see what we can do. Because at the end of the day, I feel like that's what God created us to do anyway. I mean, that's the life of worship, is go live it to the fullest extent that he built you, created you to do, so, and there's a bunch of different ways you can take that and teach on that or whatever, but it sure as heck isn't like, hey, start your biblical purpose when you're 21 after college. I don't buy that. And as long as my kids are getting sweaty, getting dirty, having fun, understanding life is hard, experiencing difficult things, I'm putting them in awkward conversations with grownups or whatever. Yes. To me, that is a life of worship, because it's doing all that they can with all that they've been given, which to me is excellence. And also in this case, you could say that's a life of worship. So I'm trying to do that, because I'm not trying to just get to the end, whatever that even means.
That's so good. I mean, like, it's great. That was one of the decisions. We didn't even allow our oldest daughter to have a phone until she was in high school.
Great.
But she's also one of the few 16-year-olds that can sit and have a conversation with adults.
Right.
It's the thing I've been trying to teach them lately is never take for granted. We just had this conversation 2 weeks ago, moments to have conversations with people who are older than you. Because when you get to a teenager, it's like, oh, like older people, like they don't understand. They don't know. They're not cool. They're old, right. Whatever. But the thing I love about my soon to be 13, I'm about to have 2 teenage girls in my house. Okay. She'll be 13 in October. And her favorite people are her grandparents.
That's cool.
Like, I joke all the time. I'm like, I think she would rather live with them than us. It's like anytime there's a school break, hey, can I go spend the night with Granny and Pa?
And that's great.
But because of that, like, she has a different type of emotional maturity about herself. Like, she's still a kid. She's still, a preteen girl. But like, I love the fact that my kids are learning, like, hey, because I tell people all the time, like, if you only hang out and get the any kind of wisdom or knowledge from your peers, you're going to be an idiot the rest of your life. Right. Okay. I mean, think about, like, if you only stayed in that world or in that, you're only getting, advice, or you're only getting input from people who are in the same season that you're in, and you're not learning anything to grow to or to aspire to, right? You're staying in that same mindset. And I think that's true for our kids. It's like, I don't think we do a good job. And that's a whole other conversation too, about like how we just keep them kind of sheltered inside, watching screens all the time.
Yeah.
Don't get an opportunity to engage with somebody who can give them a little bit more life experience.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff, like, I wrote down the 4 questions to ask before your kids leave your house. Like, basically when they go into adulthood, like, if you can picture your kid walking away and going into life, whether it's college, going to do whatever it is they want to do, leaving your house, and they had 2 suitcases, what would I want in those 2 suitcases?
That's good.
And the first question is like, who do I want them to be? That's all about character, right?
Right.
And the thing that, is that you see a lot is this idea of our kids are never wrong. Right. It's like, if the principal calls home or the teacher sends a note home, it's like, well, there must be something wrong with that teacher. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Something wrong with that.
Yes.
Maybe it's the school's fault,
Yep.
And I think, man, we are so terrible at helping develop the character. Like, who do I want my kid to be? Do I want my kid to be a victim his entire life? Do I want them to assume that if it's hard or it's hurtful, that it's wrong? But those are the things we don't even think about sometimes as parents, is like, man, how am I preparing them to understand not only that they can be wrong,
right,
are wrong, but how do I how do I say I'm sorry? How do I restore that? How do I learn from that and become better?
That's good.
And the second question is, what do I want them to know? You know, like what are some of those wisdom things, whether it is, you know, stuff about their faith, whether it's stuff about life in general, culture, all those things. And then like some of the stuff we just talked about is what are the experiences I want them to have. Right.
Yeah. Great.
And like, I love what you said about, especially the 1,000,000 miles thing, because it's like, if I can show them a world that's bigger than here's what I told my sophomore daughter the other day, because she's also got her first boyfriend.
Oh,
and yeah. So that's driving, and
that's quick.
So, I don't know. You might have to do another podcast.
Let's do that one.
So, you know what? Everything I said, Swebb, I was wrong. So, but I told her, you know, like there's what was I talking about? I just went off the rails.
Man, you've got a sophomore that has a boyfriend. I would have gone off the rails too. So
totally off the rails. Oh my gosh. But it really is like, what do I want them to know? But I don't know where I'll come back to in a minute. But
then you said, what are the experiences you want them to have?
Yeah, I want them to have. And you know, I started thinking about her being, now I got it. Okay, I'm back. I told her, here's what you're going to see in high school. For some people, this is the best days of their life. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I know people in their 40s, like they can't quit talking about, like, remember our junior in high school, remember that time in high school, remember state championship, remember blah, blah, blah. And I said, I want you to understand there is an entire world outside of that school that only has 1,000-something students in it.
Yeah.
And I said, I know you're going to get sucked into thinking like, I've got to make all of my life decisions in these next 2 years. Like my husband's here, my life. And it's like, no. Like, don't get me wrong. Enjoy your high school days, but it's not the best years of your life. I promise you that.
No.
So that's some of the experience. It's like, how do I get her outside? How do I get her to travel around, see other things to where she think like, this is the only thing that exists in my life.
That's right.
And the last one is like, what skills do I want them to learn? You know,
good. Yep.
Like, I think about like one of the first gifts she got, which is cool. This is how my friends get me, but like we were at her birthday party, they're giving her gifts or whatever. And one of the main gifts she got was some pepper spray. It's like, you know, I told her, I was like, hey, before you leave my house, I want you and your sister and your brother. I want you to know how to defend yourself.
Right.
You know, like, I want you to know how, you know, if you're walking to your car at night, whatever, like, be on the lookout. Those are skills. Those are things that I have to think through as a dad of like, what are those things I want them to learn? I want them, like, I wish anything that I would have learned a trade. You know, when I was younger. Those are things that are invaluable in life.
That's right.
I see all the time, like building their own whatever. And I'm like, man, I wish I could do that. I can do that. Put together the Lego set. It comes with instructions. So,
oh man, I get that. I don't know if this takes it in a dark turn, but even just the other day, we were at Buc-ee's, the world's greatest gas station.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
All of
my
them.
first Buc-ee's last year. Oh my gosh.
Isn't it great? Yeah. Some people need to go on vacation just to Buc-ee's. So, and we've been to
only afford to go to vacation.
That's right. That's fine. It's worth it. It's fine though. You can afford it. Just go there and get some gas. You're good. But we were in there just the other day driving home. It was our last Buc-ee's stop, as a matter of fact, about 2 hours from our house. And I said, and it was, talking about the what skills you want them to learn, and you said the pepper spray thing. That's how I got to this dark thought here. But I even turned around. I said, "Hey," because I had already had this conversation with Stellan, my son, a couple of weeks ago, and then multiple times over the last couple of weeks. But then my daughter, she's like, "What are y'all talking about?" And I said, "Okay, somebody walks into this gas station right now with a gun and starts shooting. What do you do?" And so I know that sounds kind of dark. Or you can just call it preparation. So, and I just asked her, and we made it kind of like a lighthearted thing, because it you know, it wasn't like, all right, guys, let's go to Buc-ee's for the sole purpose of, you know, learning how to defend ourselves in a crazy world. It wasn't that. But it's just the moment hit. It was just kind of like a kind of, I'm not trying to make light of that kind of situation, but it was kind of like a silly moment kind of deal. And I was like, hey, what would you do? And she's like, oh no, I don't know what. And she kind of was like, am I supposed to do something? And my wife made a funny joke about just turning and running, and which is true to an extent. But anyway, and I just went a little bit deeper. But the point is, I just always find opportunities like that to say those things. And again, it's not always that serious. I know that's a really dark one coming out of the recent happenings here in the state, but it's real life too, though. And so I always give my kids those kind of things, like, hey, if something happens to me and your mom, what do you do? What neighbor are you going to first? If we have a tornado, which we've had 3 within a few miles of our house just since we lived for 6 months.
Wow.
So, and I think, I don't know, I think it was in Kentucky or somewhere just a few months ago, and my family called me from the laundry room. But that's because all my family knows how to do that.
Yeah.
Everybody can talk about tornadoes when you live in other states, but when you live here in Tornado Alley, you're just like, hey, it actually matters now. So again, I know those are kind of serious and more dark than learning how to, whittle on the front porch. but it's that idea of like, man, just take an opportunity to give them experiences, show them things, because like you said, knowing a trade, knowing how to work with your hands, knowing how to do hard things, knowing how to keep your mind busy even is just going to help them in so many ways. Even if they never need that particular skill, it's building something else in them.
Yeah. Well, I love that you said that, because that's a kick I've been on lately, is scenarios. Hey, let's talk about the scenario.
Yeah.
I took my middle daughter out to dinner the other night, and I just said, hey, let's talk. I said, do you know what peer pressure is? Yeah. So we start talking about that stuff, and I was like, hey, let's say you're hanging out six of your friends, and 5 of them are like, hey, you definitely want to take this. Like, if you swallow this, if you smoke this, if you do it, like, I'm telling you, it's going to be so much fun. You're going to feel like, I was like, let's just walk through that scenario. Like, tell me what you would say. Tell me what you would do. And of course, it's real awkward. She's like, she's just like, I don't want to talk about this type thing. But then it gave me a great opportunity to be like, hey, I just want you to know, like, addiction runs through our family, runs on my family, runs in your mom's family. And just trying to walk her through, like, not just the typical, like, just say no.
Yeah.
Walking through like consequences, like, hey, my mom, your grandmother, you realize she's laying in a nursing home right now at age 60, can't walk, mostly because of life choices, of moments like that,
right?
Of moments where, like, just having fun, just chill, but her body has been riddled, by drugs, by different things. And so, just, again, like you said, it's like you don't want to be dark about it, but at the same time, this is real life.
It's real life.
And so it's like, hey, this is, I have the conversation, then like, hey, you want some dessert?
Yeah.
Let's move on,
yeah. Right.
But it really is, like, I think those real life scenarios people aren't having, don't have it's like we want to avoid it. Again, I think we talked about the dad text thread about the gender conversation, the sex. I mean, it's crazy. My daughter comes home, like, when your daughter comes home and is like, hey, mom, what's 69 mean?
Yeah. Like, right.
Wait a minute, what?
Yeah, I definitely call my wife for that one and ask her to tell. I don't know. You tell me.
She's like, ask your dad. But like, those are, and I know the show's taking a pretty,
appropriate turn. It's fine.
Yeah.
This is great.
But it's reality.
That's right, man. It's real.
I mean, there's 3rd graders coming to school talking about this. I remember one of our principals said like, listen, your kids are not coming to school with other 1st graders and 2nd graders. They're coming to school with their older siblings.
That's right.
Or their parents that may have different values. And so
that's right.
Things that they are bringing to school with them.
That's right.
And so I think, and that's when most Christians, what would they do? The moment their kid comes home and asks that question,
right?
We got to start homeschooling.
Yep.
Obviously, we got to start homeschooling.
Yep.
Instead of engaging where they're at.
That's right.
And having the hard conversations.
So I'd love to know how you do this then, because, and I'm going to tell you the way I do it, but then I'd love to know yours, because you're down the road. I mean, I don't have a 16-year-old. So on that note, because you're right, I'm not the go to the bunker thing. Never, ever. For your safety is never a phrase I've ever once said to any human ever, especially my kids. My job is not to keep them safe. I've never said that phrase ever. I will never say that phrase. So, but I do want to instill in them belief or confidence, things like that. So so when you're talking about these conversations, whether it be the drugs or whatever, it's not theory, like you said, it's real life. And so it's not it's not me giving them every single word to say. I want to give them belief and confidence so they can take what's in them, the things they picked up from me over the years or whatever, and then go leverage what they already know themselves. So I'm putting a lot of stock in what they're getting off of me, not hearing from me.
Yes.
Because I want them to go to school and then because it requires confidence and belief to respond to the drug question, right? Or to respond to any sort of sex question, gender question, pick the hot button of the issue of the day kind of thing. Like that takes confidence. They may have words. A lot of people have words, but they don't have the confidence to speak it up.
Right.
And I'm the one, I believe that's the father's job. Obviously both parents in this case, but you know, it's a heavy weight that father should carry of being the confidence for their kids until they can believe for themselves. I tell my kids, you know, well, I was at such and such. I was talking to so-and-so today at school. My daughter's in that like textbook girl, sassy, bratty, you know, they fight a lot, all that kind of crap at school. I hate it. And, you know, I know the first response is like, oh, well, okay, just come home and we'll, like you said, homeschool or something. Or, you know, my kid's always right. And I flip it. I kind of completely change gears. And I'm like, hey, what do I say about you? Like that's all I need to know. That's all I need you to know. And you can even say it out loud to your friends. You can say it out loud as you walk down the hallway, but that's not what my dad thinks.
Right.
My dad thinks I'm this. And so I feel like that's what I've got to do to get them to quote survive life and then thrive beyond is I'm giving them belief and confidence above and beyond any sort of skill or language or whatnot. So I'm just curious if that's the way you've thought about it. How do you do that? Are there language pieces that you throw out to your family where they go, man, this is the petty way? You know what I mean? Is there something like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, it really is authentic, transparent conversation. So like an instance I used last year, we were on vacation and my middle daughter, she's wired like me. She is very like pragmatic. She's very disciplined. I mean, her discipline level amazes me. Like she's 12 years old. She's the one that gets up, journals, does all that stuff. And without anybody saying anything to her, like she just kind of wired that way. Now she's also, you know, almost that borderline OCD where it's like, calm down, you know?
Yeah.
But I remember she's like, hey, I'm going to read through the Old Testament. Like, hey, good for you. Like, that's cool. Got questions, ask. And she did. Like we were on vacation. I remember we were in a hotel room and we were actually in Charlotte and we were in a hotel. I was watching the NBA finals. And so I'm sitting there and she's over there reading or whatever. And she starts talking to my wife and I barely hear the conversation. Well, she gets to the part where the rape of Tamar in the Bible.
Yeah.
And she starts asking these questions about like, it was about the response of David and the response of the brother and all this kind of stuff. And this was a moment where a lot of parents will be like, well, you know, like you probably need to read a different book. You probably need to like, basically, how do I skirt around this? And I just hit it head on, you know, it was hard. It was awkward in the moment. So, but what it started teaching me and reminding me is like the thing I always tell, I mean, we talk about this often in our house is like, there's no conversation that's off limits.
Yeah. Good.
I think that the reason why sometimes stuff like this happens is because kids have it in their mind. Like if I tell my parents this, there's going to be this shame, there's going to be awkwardness, there's going to be guilt, or it's going to be just completely shut down. Right. Like, hey, you shouldn't be talking like that. Instead of like, hey, let's kind of have a conversation around like why we're
that's great.
This or what. And so for us, it's something I keep hammering home. There's no conversation off limits. There's no conversation off limits because I think whether we tell our kids this or not, they believe there are conversations that are off limits.
Right. That's right.
And it's almost like we create where they live in two different worlds. There's the world I live in, the reality with my friends and school and stuff. And then there's parent land, and parent is where everything is okay. It's hunky dory. It's imaginary. It's everything's going to be all right. And instead of like, hey, you know, let's hit it head on. And so for us, that's kind of our, you know, petty way, whatever is like transparent, fully honest. I mean, there was a situation with our oldest and we, you know, it was a tough situation. At the end of the day, it was like, I remember even like a couple weeks later coming back and saying like, I asked her, I said, hey, what did you, there was some discipline involved. And I said, hey, what did you learn over this time period of being disciplined, all that kind of stuff? So I learned that I can literally talk to you all about anything. And
Great.
Hey, that's what I wanted. I didn't want you to just be good. And that's what I'm trying to teach them too. I asked my kids this. We went out to dinner and it was just me and the kids. We went to a baseball game. I said, hey, ask me anything. I love those questions, even those questions. And it's so funny because my son's like, what would you do if you had $1,000? I'm just thinking like, that's not a lot of money, bro.
Yeah.
So
I'd buy gas.
I'd buy gas, groceries, and then still owe money. But,
right.
but it really was this moment like, hey, do you guys know why we discipline you? It was funny, like hearing the answers, like, you want us to be good. And it's like, no, I said, I don't want you to be good. I don't want you to behave. I don't want you to, I said, the whole point of discipline is to train yourself to do something. Like if I'm disciplining myself to work out or to eat healthy, whatever, I'm not doing this to punish myself. Doing this to train myself to get to a point where one day it's natural.
That's great.
Just I've prepared myself for where I'm going. Right. And I said, the reason why we discipline you is not to punish you, is not to get you to, get in line or behave. I said, all three of you are not mentally, emotionally, or spiritually mature enough to do the things we're asking you to do on your own.
Yeah, man.
I said, but my job as your dad is to train you in these moments, discipline you in these moments that one day when I let go, now you can do the things you once couldn't do before.
Yeah.
Power. And it was like this epiphany of like, oh, because if our kids only grow up thinking that discipline is punishment, or correction is then that's why they run as far away from any kind of discipline or correction when they get older. Cause they're like, now I have the freedom to say like, I don't want that.
Yep.
Instead of teaching them like, no, this is good because it's going to create in you the ability to make wise decisions when you get older, because you couldn't do it at 12 and 13. You don't have the emotional capacity. But if I discipline you in that, it teaches you, okay, now in the future, when these things come up, I make different decisions. I make better decisions for myself.
So good.
And so it's also that line of like, man, in life, every decision has a consequence, good or bad. Right. And so, and that's, I know we're in this conversation of like missional parenting, but I mean, you talked about it already, but I really want you to dive into, because I had screenshotted and saved it. And I actually sent it to one of my men's group thread that I have. I said, I want you guys to see this because it was so powerful. But, when we're dealing with issues like school shootings, violence, bully, it's almost like a natural part of our culture.
Yeah.
Just sad to say, but man, you sent out a text to our dad group and it was like 3 different texts, but man, it was so powerful. But talk to us about the idea of parenting with a mission, and just kind of what you tell your kids when in situations like this, because I think even the conversation of like, do I talk to my kids about this or do we ignore it?
Right.
Because it didn't happen here. It happened in Texas. Right. So it's like, it's best just don't watch the news. Don't listen to anything and keep going. But talk to us about like the conversation you have with your kids.
So just to catch everybody up, that was the context. The context is somebody asked, I don't remember who it was on our text thread, that asked basically, what are you doing now in light of that Uvalde shooting? What do you tell your kids? And a few other people had plenty of good things to say. I think you even put a link out there for something so really good. But to me, it stirred up this idea of I'm sending my kids into the world. I'm not allowing them to venture out during the daytime. It's not that kind of thing, but I'm sending them. And it's funny, we say the phrase missional parenting or missional anything for that matter, but then we act and respond as if it's like this idea of safety or hunkering down or whatever. But if you said the word, we're on a mission, I go straight to military if that's the case.
Yeah.
And we if you're on a mission, then you should be surrounded. You should be being shot at. You've heard people in the military say that too. Like if you're supposed to be being shot at, it's your job. If we're not being shot at, there's a problem. And I know that sounds crazy and sounds dark. to an extent. And it sounds crazy to talk about that when you're talking about your kids, because when they turn 18, then you can do that.
Yeah.
But the problem is, if I wait till they're 18, I send them out with no vest on, with no ammo.
Yep.
They don't even have language. They have no ability to communicate with their team in that case. So to me, when things like that happen, and that's a really big, dark, bad thing to happen. But I think there are other equally important, weighty things that happen. We can go, oh, let's just wait a couple of days before you go out, or let's wait a couple of days before you do this or that. I think COVID's a good example of like, well, let's just hang on and see what happens 2 years later. What happens? I'm like, nah, let's go. We have stuff to do. We're going to be the family, and you're going to be the part of the family too. You're not like, when I say we're going to be the family that changes the world, or goes and builds the church, or goes and instills confidence in people, or whatever. It's not me and mom will do that. You guys stay here. We'll call you back. It's like, no, we are going to be the family that does that. So I think I even signed off on this text. Let me look. I was like, I'm the sending dad. Even at the end, I said, be a good, active, believing, courageous sending dad today. And I'm not telling other people how to act or respond or vote or whatever they want in regards to the shooting stuff. But I'm just telling them how I'm thinking about it. Is I'm not using this as an opportunity to say, hey, I'm sorry, God, I'm going to go sleep for a decade until you get things in order. Yeah. Instead, God's like, hey, I went ahead and handled some stuff. I need you to get your crap together and go handle some stuff. And I firmly believe my 7-year-old, my 10-year-old are weapons to go do effective, good, world-changing things. That reminds me, I haven't said this in years, but my dad used to always say this. I'm glad I just remember this. He probably every day in middle school or junior high and high school, I think even in elementary school, he would always say, hey, you're an awesome weapon in the hand of God. He would say that, and he would kind of say it flippantly, kind of joking. It was never like in a serious moment. But it's funny. It's probably been a decade since I've said that phrase. But now that comes to mind, is you're an awesome weapon in the hand of God. And I actually believe that. And so I send my kids out, and I know that sounds crazy, but I don't think you can be a Christian and not also have this idea, this belief that they're not really your kids.
Yeah.
God's got it. And what he chooses to do through your kids is up to him. And he's allowed you to steward a few like minuscule moments. And I know for us, it sounds like a long time to say 15, 20, 25 years, but we all know, if we're Christians, in the grand scheme of things, that's like a vapor, as the Bible says. Your life is but a mist. And so I'm trying to take that to an, again, hyperlogical place and be like, well, what can I do to give them ammo now?
That's so good.
And so that's just my mindset. So that's a fun conversation. I don't want to have that conversation a ton, but at the same time, I guess I kind of do, because I want my kids to be fit, so to speak, in shape to take on the world at the fitness level required to live a life in this world.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's so good. I mean, I'm thinking back to what even Jesus told his disciples. He's like, yes, I'm sending you out among the wolves. Yeah. It's like, I'm preparing you for something that's going to be really, really difficult.
That's right.
I think the thing that drives me crazy, and this is the stuff that's so freaking frustrating for me, is there's and I don't know what it is, but it's something that gets in us that thinks it's everybody else's responsibility to shape my child. So, school's supposed to educate my kids.
Right.
Church is supposed to disciple my kids. And like, there's never an ownership of like, because you always hear people complain, like, there's nothing for my kid at the church. There's no, it's like, you guys are too busy playing dodgeball instead of discipleship. You guys are, and I'm just like, we get an hour with your teenager.
That's right. It's not our job.
That's right. Or school. It's like, man, what do y'all teach? Well, what are you teaching your kids? Because at the end of the day, if I take responsibility, it's my job to educate my kids, especially some of the important, whether it's values that we have or spiritual thing, whatever, then it's a different approach, right? Because now you're saying like, okay, I'm sending them into a place. I need to be aware they might be teaching some things that doesn't line up with really what is either truth or what I would guide them toward. And so now I've got to engage in the conversation. Instead of like, I'm going to find the right church. I'm going to find the right school or homeschool. I'm going to find the right whatever. And then my kids are going to be okay. Yeah. And never taking ownership of like, well, what is my responsibility in this whole thing? Yeah. It'd be like, me getting a paycheck, giving it to you and saying, why did you spend my money?
Right.
Right. I am responsible to steward my own family.
That's right.
My money,
That's
like
right.
there are other things that impact it and, supplement those things. And that's the way I look at it. It's like, man, the student ministry, the kids, that is a supplement to what we're doing, but it is not the replacement.
That's right.
But unfortunately, it's like we want as little responsibility and work as it takes. Because what the stuff that we're talking about, like even I can imagine somebody listening right now, and the moment you said, I keep a spreadsheet for, the million miles, I'm gonna have going like, oh my gosh, that is ridiculous. Like, who's got time to make a spreadsheet? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
raising kids and like, don't freaking have kids if you don't
right.
want to do the hard work to do, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, this is the world we live in. It really is mind blowing.
Yes.
That it's like, man, that requires a lot of time. That requires a lot of money. Well, then don't have kids.
Yeah.
Spend your life making your money to do what you want to do and be selfish.
Yes.
But the moment you said, like, I want to bring a child into this world, you're
right.
saying, I'm taking responsibility for raising this kid and, being a steward. And but like you said, like, man, it's in God's hands. I got to trust God that, man, if I'm going to be a good steward with it, he's going to multiply it and bless it.
That's right.
Just like anything else in my life. Right?
That's right.
So man, I think that's so important. I love the statement you said in that text that stuck out to me was, when that moment happened, you looked at your kids and said, this is why we exist. And it's wow.
This is, I want to read it because now I always like to know what other people, like where they think it hits. I said, I regularly show my kids videos of the Holocaust and tell them about other moronic parents who create hell for their kids. This is the context I'm setting up. And I tell my kids these things. I don't sit down for story time and say, all right, kids, let's talk about another bad parent. It's not that, but when it comes up, I'm not hiding it. And then I say with clarity and some swagger, see, this is why we go out. This is why we go to church. This is why we serve. This is why we didn't bunker for the last 2 years. This is why your friends and school need you. So go do something hard today and serve someone.
Yeah.
And I put that in quotes because that's actually what I tell my kids. It's what I told my kids after bad things happen. It's what I told my kids during COVID. It's like, this is why we go out. If nobody else is, that's fine. It's not daddy's job. It's all of our job.
Right.
So, yeah.
So good, man. So good.
That was a fun text read that day. I was in Kentucky. I was in Kentucky at that time. I just got done working out and I was pretty hot. So,
well, it's cool because I think, on that thread too, there's so many different people in different stages. There's brand new dads, the old men dads like me, but, it's cool to be able to learn from each other. For sure. I think, man, I know this sounds cliche-ish, but man, I think if I could encourage every dad listening, like, dads really matter.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, you cannot argue the statistics of, if a kid grows up with a very present, involved dad, how much it impacts their life.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
I hope that this encourages some dads out there and really challenges them too. But well, man, talk real briefly about, so we're talking about parenting with purpose, but even on the subject of finances, I mean, I think it's fascinating what you do with your kids when it comes to financial stuff. You and I have had this conversation, like I'm in my 40s and I'm learning so much now, or, I think I was even like 27 before I started learning even the basics of like how to manage money. I was the guy that grew up poverty mindset. Nobody taught me how to manage money. And so I remember being in college, living on my own in an apartment, and the PlayStation 2 came out, and I looked at my account. The PlayStation 2 was $250. I had $300 in my checking account.
Okay.
And my brain was like, I can afford this.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
And I bought it. And I look back and I'm like, wow, but I'm grateful that God surrounded me with so many wise people throughout my years to kind of help shape it. But I started later in life.
Right. Me too.
What I love about what you're doing is like you're starting early with your kids. So talk briefly about that.
Well, it just goes back to that intentionality, hyperlogical. What do I wish I would have known at 8, 10, 12 years old, whatever. And um, so first thing, so one thing that you're referring to, obviously, and that I've posted about before, people can go check this out because I do think it's fun. It just came to me. I didn't learn it from anybody, but I'm sure other people have taken it and made it better. But I do this thing when we go on vacation. I give the kids a daily allowance on vacation, and I say the word income, but then there's expenses. If they want to buy more time on the iPad, for example, or whatever. So, and I'll explain that in a second. But even before that, I made sure to talk regularly about money. Again, not a sit down class at the dinner table. All right, tonight's family night where we talk about money, guys. But as things come up, I try not to gloss over it. I do still say this sometimes, but I try not to, of just saying like, hey, that costs a lot. Well, what is a lot? Like you said earlier, like your son thinks $1,000 is a lot. And it is on some days, and some days it's not, So so it's relative. And so therefore it's not helpful. But if I can say, hey, listen, so recently my kids, we were like, Dad, let's buy that house. That's the house we need. I'm like, well, that's like 15 of our houses. So I don't think we can do it. But now they're like, oh, okay. That makes sense. Because dad already says we can't do X, Y, and Z because we pay for our house. But man, if I had to pay for 15 of my houses, what would we do? So I'm trying to put it in those kind of contexts. Hey, that's like 37 stuffed animals that you want me to pay for in order to get what you're saying. I'm trying to put it in that. That's what I mean by normalizing that finance. So all that to say, though, one of the things I did, we just went on vacation, just got back a couple of days ago. And then we did the same thing last year. And last year's when I made this the first time. I give them income, and people can pull principles from this stuff on their own, I'm sure. But let me just tell you what I do. I give them $5 a day, payable in cash each morning. They manage their own finances. This year I added this one. This might be fun. I said, any investing that they want to do, if they wanted to take their $5 or $1 or whatever and invest it, it'll be matched 100% using the Bank of Dad, tracked and available for withdrawal 6 months from deposit. I said, I'll keep a spreadsheet. You give me 5 now, I'll give you 10 later. And they're like, whoa, that's crazy. Now, I wish I got 50% return or 100%, I guess, returns off that. But generally, but I'm just trying to teach them now, like, wait a second. And so my daughter actually read that because I printed this out, put it in the back of the car as we drove. I'm like, this is what we're doing. And she's like, Dad, what does this mean? What does that mean? And so it allowed for a conversation. She says, if I give you 5 now, you'll give me 10 later. It's like, yes, but you got to wait 6 months.
Right.
And man, everyone in the world, everyone listening right now wishes they could get 100% return after just 6 months or 100% return at all.
Yeah.
So if I can make that a sort of normal thought when she's 10, she's going to do real well and be done working when she's 30. Yeah. That would be the goal. I told them what the potential is. You can earn $65 on this trip. $5 a day, that's $65. But see, once I make it normal, they're like, 65 is a lot. 5 doesn't sound like a lot. 65 sounds like a lot, right? And then I have expenses. For example, they can pick a restaurant and pay for it. Mobile hotspot. I'll give them an hour free per day on our mobile hotspot because that's free for us on our plan. But hey, if you want more, because on some of those 10-hour drive days, you may want more, but that's $1.50 an hour. Yeah. So I give them those kind of, that's how life works. You got to freaking pay bills. I'm paying for a cell phone bill. Well, here's your cell phone bill, $1.50 per hour. On that screen time, I told them they can sell it. They get 4 hours a day on long drive days. That's a lot of screen time, I understand. But on a 6, 8, 10-hour drive in the car, I was fine with it. So they get, I think it's actually 3 hours, I believe. They start with 3 hours anyway. And then I said, but you can sell back your time at $2 an hour. So if you only want 2 hours, then you can sell that back. You got more money. So now they have to think about it. Taxes and fees. Every time they throw a fit, they're arguing, they're rude. That's 25 cents each occurrence. You want to go to the bathroom? We just stopped. If we have to stop again because you have to go to the bathroom, you got to pay for that. That's a fee. That's like when your dishwasher explodes and you're just like, man, I didn't see that happening. Yeah, well, that's what happened. When we stopped to pee, I need you to take care of that. And if you can't, well, don't spill. If they spill food and drink in the Tezzy, as we call it, it's $2.50. That's half their income if they mess up Dad's car. So anyway, I just gave them stuff like that. And then I even give them rules, like examples, bonus pay, yada, yada, yada. And then I say, Dad, AKA founder and chairman, and Mom, AKA CEO, will select the winning bid. They can bid to earn more money. They can clean the car, clean the hotel room, empty the trash. They can help other people. They can read the Bible, 10 cents per Bible chapter, stuff like that. But they have to bid those just like you would if you're working. You got to, put in your bid. And I know it's silly now, and they won't really consciously understand the idea of bidding to build a house, like a contractor or something like that. I understand that. But I'm normalizing the language now. So later on, they're like, wait a second, I've done this before. Deja vu. I've been here before. This is interesting. And all of that is powerful. I think we underestimate the power of deja vu or just any of that subconscious stuff we soak in. we underestimate the power of that, because all these experiences, these language pieces, these thoughts, these memories, whatever, they will all stack up to be leveraged one day. But if they're not there to grab on and leverage, there's nothing we can do about that. I'd rather them have the skill, the language of bidding, the idea of investing. I want it to at least be in their toolbox, in their deja vu bank, and never be used, than the opposite of needing it one day. Like you and I are starting in our 30s or 40s to invest or whatever. And we're like, holy crap, we could have been millionaires by 40 had we just been told this 3 things over a 5-minute speech. Yes. And as you know, like I've helped a lot of people in their 20s and 30s now do that. And they're going to be way ahead of me. And I'm hoping they're going to write me a check in a few years. But, and some of them will. Some of them are really kind and generous. It's going to be great. But I'm trying to get that in my kids, not just in their 20s, but if I can get her at 10 to figure that out, my son at 7, because he's saving money now and he's doing a really good job of even investing it and multiplying it, not in the bank, but invest is not banking. That's not right. That's not exclusive to that industry. So, so they're starting to figure that out. So that's a long way to talk about it, but generally, I know you said be brief, but that's just something specific I've done that's just added the language into the family. And so now they think about it.
No, that's so good. And I think, it is funny because I love what you said about the idea of breaking it down to where they can understand how that money is used or whatever. Like you think about how many parents just like turn your lights off, like we never explain it in a term where they can understand why is it important that I take care of this? Why is it important? And then we wonder why they are 16, 17, 18, and they don't have any kind of concept of money, or they think that money is just going to always come their way. And that's the conversations we're having now with our daughter, trying to figure out like the balance of like, she's got a summer job. So it's like, okay, while you're working, you're going to have these particular bills. You're going to have this particular thing to take care of, which is gas for your car or whatever. Because then she's got to decide, like, I mean, it's funny because like day one, she texted us like, hey, can I drive to so-and-so? Okay, well, just know that's this many miles and like gas is high. Right. Is that the best choice of your drive time? Are you willing to pay for that gas? And she's like, you know what? Probably not. Yep. So she got to have a hand in that decision.
That's right.
She understood like, hey, that's going to cost me. And I don't want to pay that. You have to choose. Do I want to pay? There's certain things you can't or can afford. And then there's certain things you choose to afford.
That's right. That's right. That's good.
So that's the stuff we're trying to teach them too.
That's good. Keep it up.
Well, man, that's awesome, man. We've pretty much changed the world today.
Yeah, we have. Yeah. Everybody's a way better parent now because of us, man. Or frustrated. And hopefully, you know what? It's funny. Hopefully somebody takes this and plays it for a guy who's about to get married and say, hey, you need to listen to this before you have kids, maybe before you get married. You went on a big, you had a speech there about, 10 or 15 minutes ago. Like, yeah, that's premarital counseling. You're just telling them right there. Don't bring your kid into the world until you get your crap together.
Yeah. Well, and I tell my kids that all the time. Like, hey, you hear somebody teaching on marriage, don't tune out just because you're not about to get married. Like,
that's right.
Everybody always wants the advice when it's too late.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. Listen to the stuff now. So let's end with on a little lighter note. Let's have a little dad joke war.
Oh man, a war?
Yeah. Not really a war. Let's just let's tell some stupid jokes. And on Father's Day, here's a few dad jokes for you.
Knock them out. You got some?
I got some.
Go ahead, because I asked my daughter a while back for dad jokes because she's the joke teller. So I already have some loaded up on my phone. I don't know if they're dad jokes or not, but you go ahead.
Dude, that's true. My son, he's like, and it's funny because I'm like, it's actually kind of creative that he sits around thinking of jokes. I just wish they made sense.
Yeah.
But he's like, Dad, what do you call a fish without an eye? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, I'm like, how do you even think of, you know what I mean?
That's 70% on the way to being a dad joke though, man. Because
100%.
That's what you would say in the pool one day, probably.
Yeah. So, Swebb, what's the difference between roast beef and pea soup?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Anybody can roast beef.
You're right. Dads are terrible. I can't believe we think these are jokes. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. But tell me one of yours.
All right. Speaking of money, how do you stop a bull from charging?
I have no idea.
You cancel its credit card.
Like there is that, like, it's so funny because you get to that point where it's like in your point in life where it's like, why is that funny to me? But it's funny.
It just
So
is, man.
So I found a suitcase in the woods containing 4 kittens. And so I called animal welfare. And the lady replied, "That's terrible. Like, are they moving?" And so I said, "I'm not sure, to be honest, but that would explain the suitcase."
Oh, dude, I can go all day. I want you to keep telling me more. This is great.
Yeah. So the
All right.
doctor said I got a Peekaboo virus. They sent me straight to the ICU.
That's good. I love that. That's a granddad joke right there.
Your turn.
All right. How do you fix a broken pumpkin?
I don't know.
With a pumpkin patch.
I should have saw that one coming.
See, the textbook dad joke when it makes too much sense.
Yeah. It's like, how did I miss that? So, Bruce Lee, he was fast, but you know that he had a brother that was faster? Suddenly.
Okay, that's good. That'll be the first one I tell Summer when I get home. And then she'll write it down and she'll think I'm smart. This is good. All right, it's my last one.
Go ahead.
I always wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't have the patience.
Yes.
See, dad joke.
Yes, that's a very good dad joke. I told my wife that she needed to start embracing her mistakes. So she hugged me for a really long time.
That's a really good anniversary joke.
Last one. What's the difference between a tuna fish, a piano, and a tub of glue?
I don't know.
You can tune a fish, but you can't tune a piano.
But you can tune a piano.
Wait a minute. You can tell. I said it wrong. See, that's what I'm with that joke. I said it wrong.
That's great.
You can't tune a fish, but you can tune a piano.
Yeah, there you go. I love that.
I think it's better that I screwed it up. So, but people always ask, well, what about the tub of glue? And I said, you guys always get stuck on that.
Oh, there it is. Yes, sir. That's veteran. That's varsity right there, man.
Hey, man, dude, I freaking love you. You're amazing.
Man, I love you. This has been fun.
You're an incredible leader. I want to have you late in the future. I want to have you back on and we'll talk more leadership stuff. But here's what I want to encourage people. You need to go to the Thinkless podcast. That's THINKLESS, Thinkless podcast. That's on iTunes or Spotify. Yep. That is Swebb's podcast. You're on there with what's your co-host's name?
Parker Richardson.
So great.
Um,
phenomenal podcast, by the way. Seriously, I was so hooked. I listened to all the episodes in one day because it's that good. So if you want more insight on like just the kind of leader and the way Swebb thinks, he's an incredible thinker. Even though the podcast is Thinkless.
That's because people think less. We want to add them. We want to help them think more.
That's it. If you want to follow Swebb, that is Stephen P. Webb, at Stephen P. Webb on Instagram. He also has a website. If you're a pastor or a leader of any type listening, he actually coaches and helps churches, pastors, leaders. We've had him come in several times. He's incredible with our staff, incredible just coming to teach, coming to whatever you want. If you just want a personal coach or somebody to pour into you, somebody to pour into your staff, church, he is your guy. A wealth of experience, has served in incredible roles, and has built so many different ministries, churches. It's incredible. So that is StephenPWebb.com if you want information on coaching, on all those different things. So you have Instagram, website, podcast. Make sure you please go check out my friend and brother Stephen P. Webb, because he is amazing. So don't forget, new episode out every first Tuesday of the month. I think I talked to you this other day. I'm throwing around the idea of bringing it back weekly.
Yes.
So
do it.
Man, I do want to end with 3 or not necessarily 3, but as we close this conversation out, I do want to always give some people some application and just a little bit of keys to victory. And I only had one, and that was, you ain't got to be a perfect dad, just be an intentional one.
That's right.
So all you dads out there, just want to encourage you, be intentional. You got to be perfect. And then you had some really good ones that I wanted you to share.
Well, I just wanted to say that remember that your belief is the fuel.
Mm.
Your kids are going to run as fast or as far as you believe in them, and they got to feel it. It's going to be proven. You can't say it. It's got to be proven. So belief is the fuel for your kids, and your lack of belief is probably also their lid. So keep that in mind. And then the last one that sticks out to me, and I don't have a sticky way to say it, is, but just be surgical with your language. Don't be flippant, be surgical. I don't tell my kids, hey, I'm trying to keep you safe, because I'm actually not. And so I don't want to put that in their head. Right. And we spent the podcast talking about different language pieces, but generally just be surgical with it and take it seriously.
That's so good. Well, brother, man, thank you so much for
thank you.
I know your time is valuable. You're probably you don't look like it, but you might be on a plane going to Malaysia, but then you're coming back later for your daughter. I don't know. That's world is so complicated and awesome. So sometimes awesome. I want to make a TV show called Swebb's World.
Please make that show. Let's do that.
Be amazing. Hey, brother, thank you so much, man.
Looking
forward to hanging out with you soon. We'll come down to Austin. We're going to hang out and eat some big donuts. Or at least that's what I want to do.
Yes, that's what we're going to do with barbecue.
Don't forget, everybody, we were made to win, but winning starts from within.